John, thanks very much indeed, and welcome once again to City Hall, where a little later on today we'll be looking behind the headlines about cronyism that have been engulfing London's mayor and asking whether he's right to have been prioritising black organisations which help the hard to reach for the receipt of public money. If so, has enough been done to make sure that money was spent correctly? But first, to another crucial area of policy where some argue that affirmative action, special treatment is needed. Stung by the criticisms of the Macpherson report, which followed the murder of Stephen Lawrence, the Met promised to do everything possible to recruit more officers from ethnic minorities. The target was 25%, broadly, in other words, to reflect the proportion of London's population coming from an ethnic minority. Yet today, it's still just 8%. Andrew Cryan has been finding out what more should be done.
In the wake of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, the then Home Secretary, Jack Straw, announced that in 10 years, a quarter of police in London should be from an ethnic minority. That was 9 years ago, and the figure's still only 8%.
Even if every recruit that came in now until the deadline were all black, we still wouldn't hit that target or anywhere near it. Now, we have got to change strategy.
But some tactics can land you in trouble. Police in Gloucestershire and in Avon and Somerset were both found to have broken employment law by illegally discriminating against white people. Currently, employers can encourage black and minority ethnic applicants, but they can't positively discriminate. To do so would require a change in law. Speaking on behalf of Britain's leading police officers, Chief Constable Peter Fahey told a newspaper,
"If we don't get that change in employment law, then the public, the politicians and the press will have to accept that police forces will not be representative of the population. The only way we can meet that is through affirmative action."
But that's very unlikely to happen. The Association of Chief Police Officers say the government have told them it would be politically impossible to change the law. That's normally a good sign that things aren't really going to change. So is there nothing the Met can do within the existing law to help the problem? According to some, there is. The Home Affairs Select Committee will be looking into the issue in a couple of weeks' time.
No one is keen to have quotas. We need to find alternative methods by which we're able to get more black and Asian people into the police force.
And even some advocates for affirmative action say there are other things the Met could change.
Institutional racism is still there. I know what I've seen within this organisation that can actually affect so many. If we have one person that leaves the organisation due to a dreadful experience, they will infect 50 others and stop them from joining the organisation. We have to move away from that.
What ideas would you be able to teach people about nutrition? Because he was talking about some good ideas the other day, right?
The Boyhood to Manhood Foundation in Peckham is a community project that helps children who have been excluded from school. They meet less than a mile away from the kebab shop where the Home Secretary Jackie Smith felt she needed a bodyguard to feel safe. There was a mixed reaction to the idea of quotas.
Because you're black, it doesn't mean to say you're able to get on with black people. You need to be trained to be able to understand young black men. And that's the problem. A lot of police are not trained to understand young black men. In fact, some black people have problems in speaking to young black men.
Quick, short fire solutions by positive discrimination as such, by putting more ethnic minorities into the police force, I don't think it's going to be well received not only by the ethnic minority population, but also the sort of the white population as well.
Generally, crime still goes on. One or two more black faces in the police force is not going to change the crime statistics that much.
Whether or not you agree with having a target, the fact remains that while a third of Londoners are from an ethnic minority, over 90% of police officers are white.
Andrew Cryan reporting there. With me here at City Hall, Bob Neal, who's a Conservative spokesman for the London Assembly, a Conservative MP, also the Shadow Minister for London, and David McFarlane, who's the General Secretary of the Metropolitan Black Police Association. David, let's start with you. What do we do? What do you think needs to happen to get more black police officers recruited?
Well, we've been saying since the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, when it came out and the targets were set, that we needed to work really hard, and it was achievable, certainly from our position in the Black Police Association. And we felt that somehow, if you like, those who were responsible took their feet off the gas pedal. As a result, now it's going to be impossible to meet those targets. And hence why we're talking about affirmative action.
So when you say they've taken their feet off the gas, London does much better than anywhere else in the country, doesn't it? I mean, they're 8%, it was 2% about 5-6 years ago. That's an improvement, isn't it?
Yes,
a good improvement.
it is, and I acknowledge that, but it's still not good enough. It's still woefully behind, and you appreciate that the population, the ethnic minority population of London, has also risen in that time as well.
Sir Ian Blair says that, you know, the signs are yet good for this last year. So what more could be done? I mean, this presumably is a very slow process. You start from 5 or 6 years ago, confidence of the police, or the black community in the police, was so low, they don't suddenly decide, do they, overnight, I want to go and join that police force?
Of course not, but then again, we had a lot of ethnic minorities recruited into becoming PCSOs. So it is achievable, and it can be done if we have the right people involved in the recruitment process.
But they want to see affirmative action, Bob Neal. Would you go along with that?
No, that worries me very much. I'm very much in favour of us trying to recruit good people from whatever background into the police force. Because from my constituents' point of view, what they want are good coppers and honest coppers. That's the first test, people who are up to the job, regardless of background. Secondly, they want police officers who are going to treat everybody, regardless of background, with equal respect and consideration. Now, there's a lot of work being done on that part. I agree that it's really a good thing if we can get more people from ethnic minority backgrounds to join the force, and that's been happening. But I think once you get to the stage of, sometimes called affirmative action, sometimes it's called positive discrimination, once you get to the stage where people might think that somebody has been appointed into a job, not because they were the best person, but because of the background they came from, then that, I think, damages the standing of the police force. And it's a police force for everyone,
and affirmative action, David, would be at the moment kind of, you know, sort of against the law in terms of positive discrimination. Why is that? Why would it work without causing sort of resentment? Why is that where the problem is, actually choosing one over another?
I think a lot of people misunderstand what affirmative action is about, and we're looking about redressing the balance that's been going on for years, and we're not talking about taking anything, because even if we had affirmative action now and we do all the recruiting we're talking about for the next 5 years, it's still not going to be disadvantageous to our European colleagues. All we're saying is that we need to reflect, and we've got life skills as people of colour coming into the Metropolitan Police that could be useful to help to reduce crime, the fear of crime, and to help move the situation on. And right now, it's not happening.
Well, presumably that's because, and are the applicants up to scratch, or are they reaching the necessary level? I mean, presumably, if you're starting to talk about the need for improved training or getting more interested in joining the police, then we're getting somewhere, aren't we? But the actual recruitment process, favouring one, say, over a white applicant, is that right?
Well, not exactly favouring. We're looking at a situation similar to what we've got in the PSNI in Northern Ireland, or maybe going over to the US. I'm going to look at their model and refining it for something here. All we're talking about is redressing the balance in order to get the good ethnic minorities in, you know, equally as good as the white colleagues, to come into the police service and do something. Right now, out of the 32 boroughs we've got in London, only 2 of the boroughs are led by people of colour. Only 2.
Bob Neal,
and of course, and the other statistic, in the last 5 years, we've had no ethnic minority officers into the position of chief officer rank.
Bob, no, that must be of concern, and surely, presumably, the wider argument that how can you police, or how can the Metropolitan Police be said to be policing with consent, policing this capital representatively, when it just doesn't reflect the population that it polices?
Well, I think 2 things. First of all, yes, of course it's desirable to have a police service which is representative of the city. But I come back to the first test. Actually, what people above all want is one that's of ability and integrity from all places. Secondly, I don't think you achieve the desirable objectives that we're talking about here by heavy-handed top-down targets and by a system that, whatever its good intentions, actually would have the effect of creating a lot of would-be applicants of thinking they didn't have a crack of the whip.
Let's say we weren't going down that route, wouldn't it?
That's the last thing I want to say.
Let's say we weren't going down that route. Isn't it of concern that there don't appear to be the applicants, or it does not appear to be a career choice for many, many people in the black and Asian community, and that means that the Metropolitan Police is failing. It's not being as welcoming as it should be.
I think it goes two ways. I think there's a fair point here. I think there are a number of reasons for that, and it can be for not obvious reasons. I have a number of Asian friends, for example, whose aspiration is for their sons and daughters to become lawyers, to become doctors, and in a sense, they don't see joining the police service or the fire service or some of the other uniformed public services as being where they want to go. Now, that's something that we need to talk to the community about. It's not always because people think it's not welcoming. It's because they actually want to go to university and so on. It's making people realise that there's a real challenge in the police service and a really good job. So it's a bit of a give and take on both sides. Talking, dialogue, absolutely right. I think making sure that we're advertising, encouraging, that's the right way forward.
David, it is simplistic, isn't it? I mean, your approach here, I mean, where's the evidence, of course, that you get black police officers, that they speak to black people in an appropriate way or any better way than, you know, people of any colour?
Well, we certainly had the evidence. When we had, for instance, the Damilola case, where on the estate that people didn't want to speak to white officers, we suggested, let's get some of our black colleagues who can speak the different languages on that estate to speak to the people. And there was a breakthrough. And when we had the issue with the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, there were issues, there were blockages. Again, we employed our black staff, again, on those blockages. So there evidence of, that we can sustain. There's a lot of work, for instance, in the Black Police Association. We work a lot with young people through a program called The Voyage. So we're doing a lot as black staff. And don't forget the life skills that we also bring. Now, for instance, I don't dip in and out of the black community. I am the black community.
OK, David and Bob Neal, thanks very much indeed for coming in.